Hello viewers, welcome back to the Moose Mobile Auto Repair channel, and today I just wanted to talk about the use of Mode 6 data on the scan tool and how it can be useful for you in doing diagnostics. Now, Mode 6 is a separate mode in which you can use on the scan tool, especially if you're having trouble chasing those intermittent problems and no code or no check engine light problems. And so Mode 6 has been around for quite some time. On other cheap scan tools, it may go under the category as onboard diagnostics. And so originally Mode 6 is in hexadecimal format, and so it would need to be converted from hexadecimal to decimal, which is base 10. So you have base 16, which is hexadecimal, and base 10, which is decimal, which are numbers that we are able to read properly. And so the hexadecimal format is what the computer uses to display the data. And so on generic scan tools, you may need to decipher and convert from hexadecimal to decimal so you're able to read the data. But on other scan tools, it does all of that work for you. Now, Mode 6 is basically the test results that are shown on when the computer done a specific test for emissions related components. And so it will tell you the individual components, such as the catalytic converter, oxygen sensors, and so on. And so they have different monitors. You have something called drive cycle monitors. And so a drive cycle monitor is an individual system of an emission related component, such as the heater circuit for the oxygen sensor, catalytic converter, and so forth. And you also have something like misfire monitors as well. And so the computer routinely does cycles of tests for each of these components in the emissions system. And so every once in a while, the computer will initialize a test, and it will run a test, and then it will show the values, the individual stored values. So it will say it's a computer generated. So it will say on the scan tool that this component, let's say for example, catalytic converter on bank 1, the specified value should be between this range and this range. And so in order for the computer to say that, okay, this is a pass or this is a fail, the numbers, it must fall in between that specified range. If for any time or any reason that the numbers are outside that range, then it's going to flag that component and it's going to fail it. Now, if it goes outside that range by a borderline or by a considerable amount, it's going to fail it. And depending on the number of key cycles allowed, on some vehicles it's 1, 2, or 3 key cycles or something, until it's going to trip the check engine light on and set a trouble code. Now, the reason why I'm discussing about this is just to give you guys a better understanding and some information for some people who are not aware of this specific mode on the scan tool, because it's very helpful and it can be useful in using it for diagnostic purposes. And so you'll be able to see if a component, did it pass by a little bit or did it pass by a lot? And likewise, did it fail by a little bit or did it fail by a lot? Especially when you are trying to troubleshoot an issue. Let's say that you had the check engine light on and you replaced or you repaired a component. You want to go into mode 6 after the tests have been ran for some time. It takes a while for the computer to run the drive cycle monitors. And so you want to go back on the scan tool and you want to see how much did that issue or component that you fixed or replaced or whatever, how much did it pass by? Did it pass by a fraction, a borderline, or did it pass by a substantial amount? Because if it only passed by a borderline, then there could still be an issue later down the road and the check engine light could come back on very soon. Then you'll have the customer come back. So it's useful for double checking your work, and it's also useful to see how much did this component pass by or fail by. So that's where it's going to help you. Now I'm going to show you some examples in just a moment. Now mode 6 is useful because it runs standardized tests on these components, and so the computer is always making sure to see if it's within operational standards. And so in some cases you might get a vehicle where there's an intermittent misfire, but it's not enough to set the check engine light on or to store a trouble code. And so in that case you can go into mode 6 and have a look at something called misfire counts or misfire counters, and you will see individual numbers for individual cylinders. So let's say right now I'm in a 2010 Toyota Corolla. It's a 4-cylinder engine, so you can check misfire cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll see how many counts. The counts is basically on how many misfires there are in that specific cylinder or cylinders. And so the computer will see that there is a misfire, if there's any, and we'll see how many times it counted that misfire as the engine is rotating. The computer and the engine uses the crankshaft position sensor to detect misfires and vibrations and so on. So that's how the computer is going to know how many counts of misfires there are, if there's any. Now, on a normal vehicle that's not misfiring at all, it's normal to see 1, 2, 3, or 4 counts, like a small amount of misfire counts, because engines are not perfect. So every once in a while you may see 1, 2, or 3 counts, and that's normal. But to see something like 20, 30, 40, or anything above that, and then there's most likely a problem. But you'll see something 100, 200, or close to 1,000 for the misfire counters, and then you'll know that there's an issue. So I'm just using the blue driver scan tool on my cell phone. This is just a relatively very simple scan tool to use. So I'm just going to use this as a test example, just for reference. So I use this every so often because it's quick, easy, and it's useful for me. So you can see here, you can go to mode 6, scanning now. So you can see all of the different components here. So you see oxygen sensor monitor bank 1, sensor 1. You see acceptable range 0.119 to 19.898. These are just numbers that the computer has decided to configure and to put in. The value states 0.489 volts, and it said it's in the green because it's in between that range. So that means that the component or the sensor is good. So that's good. And you can see here, you see formatting on. If I turn it off, you'll see that the formatting is in hexadecimal. And so you will need to convert these numbers manually, or you can use the internet to convert it for you to decipher and what the numbers mean. Originally, older scan tools back in the day, if I'm not mistaken, probably back when OBD2 came out in 1996, older scan tools didn't really have the capability of converting the numbers for you. You would have to do it manually. And so everything these days is done automatically now. So anyhow, so you can see everything is in hexadecimal numbers. So it's not easy to understand on what those numbers mean. So you would have to convert them. So I'm going to turn the formatting back on. So we'll go to catalyst monitor bank 1 for the catalytic converter. See acceptable range 0.199776 to 9.994000. You see the value 0.204351. That number is somewhat getting closer to the minimum outside range, 0.199776. So that is somewhat close. So it's very possible that there could be an issue later down the road with this catalytic converter tripping a check engine light for usually a P0420 code for the bank 1. So it's still operating within the operational standards, so it's okay right now, but it's something to keep an eye on. That number is getting close to the minimum range. And so earlier I was discussing about misfire counters. So you can see here, misfire monitor general data. So this is the overall for the misfire counter. It said 4 counts. So number 1 said 0 counts. You see acceptable range 0 to 65,535. This does not necessarily mean that everything is good if it's within this range. So you have to be careful. You have to use this with a grain of salt sometimes, because I've had misfires. For example, 957 counts on one cylinder, and I could feel that the misfire was very bad, but it's not enough to set the check engine light, but it was extremely bad. And so it will still say it's in the green, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's okay. So cylinder 1 has 3 counts. Number 2, 0 counts. Number 3, 0 counts. There's 1 here, 1 count. Cylinder 4, 0 counts. So everything is okay here. It's normal to have some amount of cylinder counts for the misfires. So now I think that's going to be it. I'm just going to stop there. They do have onboard monitors to check to see if all drive cycle monitors have been set to ready. On this one they call it smog check. So this is for like if you need to get your vehicle emissions tested. So it will just tell you on which monitors are ready and which monitors are not ready. This scan tool doesn't make it easy to understand. but right now it's saying a question mark. So let's see if I go to scan. I think this one you have to put scan in order to have a look at it. It says smog readiness check passed. You can now have your vehicle smog checked. This is for the emissions testing. So this means that all of the monitors on this vehicle has been set. So this means that if I want to go and do an emissions test, it's going to pass because everything is okay. Now, we don't have any more emissions tests here in Canada, in the province of Ontario anymore, because they abolished the program many years ago. So there's no more emissions test in this area of the province in southern Ontario. But in other countries and provinces and states, depending on what state or province or country you live in, it's going to vary if you need to do emissions test. So anyhow, everything is okay here. Evaporative system, all done. I know when you go for emissions testing, they may allow up to 1 or 2 monitors for it to not be ready, and you can still be able to pass the emissions test. So these are just the individual monitors. So each monitor has to be ready in order for the test to be complete. If it's not ready, it just means that the computer, it's still in the process of running that test. So there are different driving conditions in which you need to drive the vehicle in order to get that monitor to be set to ready. Only if there are no problems with that specific drive cycle monitor or component. So as long as there are no problems with the parts or the component, you should be able to pass these monitors. And it may take, if you have a check engine light and you clear the code, then it may take some time for the drive cycle monitors to set. Sometimes can be a few days up to a week, depending. Usually the evap monitor is the one that takes a long time to set. Could be up to a week or so. So I'm gonna go back. I'm going to give you guys some more examples, and then that's going to be it. So here's one example. This was from 2015 Toyota Sienna. I'm still in the process of working with that vehicle. We are going to be replacing the catalytic converter on that vehicle soon. This is just a screenshot that I put a while ago. I'm just showing this for example and demonstration purposes. So on this one you can see the catalyst monitor on bank 1. You see the value 0.092, said acceptable range 0.100 to 6.554. So this failed. This failed the component test, and it set the check engine light for P0420 for the catalyst efficiency below threshold on bank 1. So this failed by a borderline. This is 0.008 that it failed by. It failed by a fraction. So this is just on the border. That one. You see bank 2, the value 0.245, and the acceptable range the same as bank 1. But you can see the value is so much higher, and it's in the green. There is nothing wrong on bank 2. And from what I know of, usually the bank 1 is the one to fail first, because usually catalytic converters don't fail on their own. But this vehicle has a lot of mileage on it. It has about 347,000, and so it's the engine is old now. The the service life of the catalytic converter is done. It's time to replace it. When you have 347,000 kilometers, that's pretty much how much you get service life from the catalytic converter. There's no drivability issues or any problems, or it's not burning oil, it's not burning coolant. There's no misfires or anything like that. Didn't have any issues before that. It's just that the service life is up, is done. So it's time to replace this part. I already did the diagnostics on this, which I'm going to do in a separate video later on. I'm going to be replacing the catalytic converter on that vehicle. So that one, you see it failed by a tiny bit, and the customer told me that the check engine light would sometimes go off, then come back on. So the driving conditions are going to change over time. So sometimes it will fall within the acceptable range, and sometimes it will go outside the acceptable range. So that's that. I'm going to show you one other screenshot now. So this is the other screenshot when it got better, it passed, and then it failed again. The check engine light would turn off, and then it came back on. See the value? 0.099. The same van, same vehicle, but it failed by a tiny fraction. So this means that the catalytic converter, it failed by a fraction, but it's still, the vehicle still drives relatively fine. There's no issues. It's driving okay. So it's not severely clogged up. If this value was a lot lower or a lot higher outside the range, then that would mean that there could be major drivability problems. But if that number drops any more than that by a substantial amount, it will get to the point where the catalytic converter is too clogged up and the acceleration will be extremely poor. But that's not what the vehicle is doing now. It's just failed by a borderline. So this is how you know that if something is failing or passing by a little bit or by a lot. And you can still see on bank 2 the number is still the same as the one in the previous screenshot. So bank 2 is still okay. Some people would recommend to replace both cats, bank 1 and bank 2, but honestly that would be a waste of money, because bank 2, there's nothing wrong with it. So I would leave bank 2 alone until it has a problem. So that's it. I just wanted to give you guys just a little brief overview on how to use Mode 6 data. I'm just hoping that for some of you guys who are not aware of using this system, it's going to help you quite a bit. I use it quite often just to check things every now and then, and it's very useful in diagnostics. Now, sometimes you may not be able to find much in Mode 6 if the issue is not happening on the vehicle that you are working on. And I do get a lot of intermittent problems every now and then, and sometimes you may be chasing nothing, and so sometimes you just have to tell the customer to wait till the problem gets worse, because some intermittent issues, they'll come and go and you're able to duplicate it. That's a different story. But there are some intermittent issues that happens once and they never show up ever again, and never to be heard about again. So you need to watch out, because some things, they may just happen once and never show back ever again, and the vehicle will be driving absolutely fine. And so those are the intermittent issues where you just do your checks, see if you find anything, and other than that, just charge for your diagnostic time, an hour or 2 hours, however, how many hours you agree with the customer, whether you find something partially wrong or you don't find anything at all. And if you don't find anything at all, there's not much that you can do except to check the systems in which you are suspicious about and to see if you find anything. And so yeah, I'm just going to conclude this video now, and that's going to be it. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please don't forget to give it a like, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. And if you haven't hit that bell notification, uh, don't forget to put the bell notifications on, because it's going to notify on when I put out a new video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day and take care.